What if I told you that Robert Kiyosaki lied?
Thank you all for tuning in. My name is Hussein Abdullah, founder of HAHOMES. Today we're going to discuss one of my favorite books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and its author, Robert Kiyosaki. I was given the book Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was about 19 years old, and I like it so much I had two copies. I couldn't put the book down. I read the book for about an hour and a half straight. In fact, I studied it. And as soon as I finished the book, I took strategies out of the book and put them right to practice. The first thing I did was bought a couple of CDs, certificates of deposit, and invested my money. The CDs I invested in gave me more interest than I've ever had in a bank account. I didn't know anything about high yield savings. A couple years go by, and then I needed more information because I feel like I maxed out what I could attain with just these books. So I purchased another book, OPM, and that's also in the Rich Dad series. One of the strategies I used from the book OPM was paying the entry fee. Now, paying the entry fee is when you don't have money and you have to use other people's money. You overpay or overpromise to buy your way into a deal. I was able to buy my first investment property with $2,500 of my own money and $40,000 of credit cards. Thanks again to the strategies from this book. I also take inspiration from movies. One of these movies is Wall Street, starring Michael Douglas. There's a scene in the movie where Gordon Gekko is driving by his first investment property.
You see that building? I bought that building 10 years ago. My first real estate deal. Sold it 2 years later, made an $800,000 profit. It was better than sex. At time, I thought that was all the money in the world. Now it's a day's pay.
Well, that story is true for me. If I make $2,500 in a day, it's a bad day for me. So this real estate investment strategy stuff really worked. And we're talking about over a 20-year spurt. But what we never get to in this book or any of the other books I've experienced with Robert Kiyosaki is at what point does OPM and leverage become a bad idea for an investor, especially a new investor? As most of you may know, a lot of markets in America right now are tanking. In 2020 and 2021, the market was inflated. Prices were skyrocketing. Interest rates are 2 and 3 and 4%. The economy was booming. But now with 6, 7, 8% rates, no one is buying a home. When I really started to take off in real estate, I benefited from being able to turn over properties. Banks were lending money. And again, we were using OPM and we were using these strategies. And one strategy that we were using was avoiding paying taxes or overpaying taxes because we love to pay taxes, right? With that being said, instead of making profits, we were purchasing homes and some other things and using loans to keep assets, have other people paying off our mortgages, and other people would be tenants in this situation. And we were able to pull out money from properties that was not tax free because you don't pay taxes on loans. So, again, the book gives you very good strategies on how to use OPM to build a portfolio. What the book does not talk about, and what I've never heard Robert Kiyosaki talk about, is what happens when the economy changes. What happens when things start to tank? For those who are not investors, there's something called escrow. Escrow is taxes and insurance. At one point, most of the rentals that I had were profitable. They were making 10, 15, 20% in net ROI, return on investment. Once these escrows increase, they increase my mortgage and they shot up. Insurance rates across the country have spiked. So now a property that was making $200 or $300 a month went from that down to losing $100 a month and losing $200 a month. Now, just for conversation, let's multiply that by 30 or 40 or 50. Could you imagine what would happen if you had 50 properties that all have mortgages and all of them are either losing money or breaking even, what happens when people can't pay their rent? What happens when you have unit turnovers? There's no explanation or any exit strategy on what to do when things start to go bad. Robert Kiyosaki brags about having $1.2 billion in debt. Again, even though his net worth is $100 million. What happens when that $1.2 billion in the real estate portfolio drops 10% and you lose $120 million in worth? What happens when the golf courses slow down? What happens when people aren't renting the hotels anymore? We never get to that. And it makes you wonder why you end up filing for bankruptcy in 2012 in Robert Kiyosaki's case. One other point of contention that a lot of people have, and it's not really a big point for me, but I'm just putting it out there because I think it might tell some of the story, is that there really is a question if there ever was a rich dad. Robert Kiyosaki published his first book in 1992. Rich Dad, Poor Dad didn't come out till 1997. He tried to get this information out, and nobody cared. It wasn't until he told this amazing story, a contrast of one dad who was a hardworking principal, but he was broke, and another dad who was just super savvy, he wasn't formally educated, and people loved the idea, to the tune of 40 million book sales. Some might question that Robert Kiyosaki's $100 million worth didn't even come from real estate. It came from the 40 million book sales of just that one title. He has 26 books, and he also sells seminars, workshops, and coaching. Think about the car salesman that doesn't drive the car he sells, or the jeweler that doesn't wear the jewelry that they sell. Now, I'm not calling him a fraud, I'm just raising questions. Is Robert Kiyosaki the $100 million man because he's one of the best and most famous authors of all time? Or is it because he's really a savvy real estate investor? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you'd also like to learn how to have exit strategies, reach out to us. Our links are down below. And if you like this content, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. Talk to you soon. Peace.